WCTV is recording and broadcasting the meeting, and Mrs. Ruiz is making an audio recording of the meeting. We have 3 members present tonight, so every vote will be made by a roll call vote. Could we all rise for the Pledge of Allegiance? I pledge of allegiance
to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
First on the agenda is public comment. Oh, I'm sorry. Well, first on the agenda is public comment. Would anyone like to address the committee?
Good evening, folks.
Good evening.
My name is Brian Fitzgerald. I'm a 5th grade humanities teacher, and for 10 more days, I am the president of the Wareham Education Association. And I'm finishing up that gig I've been doing for over 6 years. And I was just thinking, I've seen the entire school committee turn over. I've seen people come, I've seen people go, I've seen somebody come and go and come back. 10 principals. New superintendent, new assistant superintendent, new director of student services, new finance person that we're about to lose, much to the loss of Wareham. Half the buildings with students in it being closed in the last 6 years. I've seen the rumor mill move from the soccer sidelines to Facebook. I've seen computers go from the special room where you sign up to every student has one every day. But I wanted to talk about what hasn't changed, and that's the importance that we're in a field that is about people. I'm not sure everybody knows that the school committee is a volunteer committee. It's a really rough volunteer job. And you see a lot of paper. But we're in a field that's about people. And there are student teachers who write great lesson plans and can execute a curriculum flawlessly. But if you melt down in front of people, you should not be in education. So while I hope that the rate of change doesn't continue quite as furiously over the next 6 years, with one exception. I'd love to see an elementary school where there's no lead in the water or asbestos in the floor. One change I'd love to see is I would love to see the volunteers in the school committee in the schools a lot. I will give credit here to Jeff Sweat and Michael Flaherty, the 2 members of the school committee I've seen in my classroom during my career. And I know it's a lot to ask because most of the school committee has day jobs and they have families too. But projects and presentations and paperwork don't match pupils. That's where you see what's happening in the school. That's where you see the hundreds of educators killing themselves. I made a mistake of going into someone's classroom today, and we had a long conversation about what she was doing, and she was going to be staying late tonight to throw a party for her students. And I looked around and said, well, at least you don't have to move. And she said, yeah, I do have to move. I just haven't had a chance to start yet. Most of us are moving. So if you come into the schools in the next few days, we're going to give you a box. Even better if you bring one. But the main thing that I hope happens is that I still see a lot of you on a Monday in November, on a Tuesday in March. Doesn't have to be the science fair graduation, but there's so many great things that happen in these schools. And there are so many mundane things that are so important that happen in these schools. And even though I'm no longer going to be going to these meetings that often, I still hope I'm going to see a lot of you next year. So the kids in this town, I love these kids and I love this town. They deserve all that we can give. So I wish you great luck and I wish you great wisdom in the work that you're doing. Thank you.
Thank you very much. And I do hope that we do continue to see you at our meetings.
Maybe.
Is there anyone else who would like to address the committee? Next on the agenda is good news, and we'll turn it over to the superintendent.
First, I would just like to thank Mr. Fitzgerald for his many, many, many hours of service and working collaboratively. I appreciate the effort, and I will miss you. So I'll come and see you in your classroom. And I would like to ask Mrs. Cote to come forward. Oh, not Mrs. Cote, sorry, Mrs. Chandler.
Well, just like Mr. Fitzgerald said, with all of the change, sometimes there is also longevity. And tonight, I have the honor to speak about someone who's had longevity in Wareham Public Schools, 40 years of longevity and sustainability. This year, just like any other, with energy, charisma, and positivity, Mr. B, Mr. Boulier, Johnny B, we call him, we want to say thank you for your 40 years of service in Wareham Public Schools. We can't thank you enough for your dedication to our students, to our schools, and to everyone. And I just want to say thank you so much. And he will be next year as well, in some capacity. Right, Mr. B?
Oh, absolutely.
That's right.
Tutoring.
There you have it. Thank you. Thank you, school committee.
Okay, next I would like to thank our student representative, Jamie Reed. This is her last meeting for 2 years. You've been our wonderful student rep. I've enjoyed getting to know you, sitting next to you. Thank you very, very much. We will miss you.
Thank you.
So we'll continue with good news. Does anyone have anything they'd like to share? Okay. Now we'll continue with good news. Does anyone have anything they'd like to share? No? Mike?
Sure. As Mr. Fitzgerald said, there's so much going on in the schools right now. Actually, don't ask me how or why, but I ended up taking in that recital the Kaleidoscope put on. It was not a high school. It's not a Wareham school event, but it did occur at the high school, and I managed to get in there at last minute, and it was really something. Those girls put on a really good show, and I can see why it cost so much money. but I was glad I went. But I also wanted to point out, now we just had the graduation ceremony, and so in the following weeks after that, there's a ton of these graduation parties. And I happened to go to a graduation party. And well, let me back up a little bit. So we always like to say that, you know, the teachers in Wareham really care, and they do. And I always say, well, if you're a teacher, you better care, or you're in the wrong line of work. But what is it about Wareham teachers that are so special? And I had a hard time putting my finger on it. And I mean, I know it, I just can't articulate it. So whenever I'm at an event and I'm talking to students that may have gone to another school choice, I say, okay, well, you know, what's the big difference? Did you notice anything different when you went there from Wareham? And they would say, usually, that the teachers cared a lot more in Wareham. That basically, you know, where they were, it was like more of an occupation. It was just their job, but in Wareham, the teachers really made the extra effort. So it kind of came home to me when I was at this graduation party. It was for Alex Moulding. Well, some of you, I'm sure, know him. And his sister, Natalia, who was in 10th grade, my son's grade, she had surprised him and did a video, went to the school and met with a bunch of Alex's teachers and had a video made up. And in that video was a bunch of teachers congratulating Alex and wishing him well, and you could see it on their faces. You just knew they cared, and even to just participate on that and be in on it. So I'd like to just recognize the people that I recall seeing in that video. Miss Kirby, Mr. Tabor, Mr. Gardner, Mr. Wilga, Mr. Souza, Mr. Christian Fernandez, and also want to recognize Nico for helping Natalia with the editing. It was just so cool to see, and how much the teachers do really care. And I wish you all could have seen it yourselves, but it was nice.
Thank you. So as you said, there are a lot of celebrations going on. One of them was the scholarship award night at the high school, and I just want to acknowledge that there was more than $400,000 awarded that night, which was, I actually thought I heard wrong when I heard them announce some of the scholarships, and no, it wasn't wrong. So I just want to say congratulations, and I've said this before, and thank you to all of the generous donors who give out that money, who allow our student, to give that money to our students. It's really amazing. And one of the other great things over the last couple of weeks, one of the many, was when the graduates walk through the elementary and the middle schools after their breakfast before graduation. And it's exciting for the graduates, but to see the looks on the faces of the younger kids. And it just seems that is getting bigger and better every year, so it's really exciting. So thank you to those in the elementary and the middle schools who made that day really special for the kids who were graduating. And along the lines of what Mr. Fitzgerald said, I just want to say thank you again to the staff who is having to pack. And, not only the end of the year is really stressful and busy, and now they've had to add that to what they've had to do. And I just want to acknowledge and say thank you to them, to all of them who are having to do that now too. And that's all I have. So the next item on the agenda is the minutes of the meeting from June 6th. Does anyone have any questions or changes to the minutes? If not, could I have a motion to approve the minutes?
So moved.
Second.
All those in favor?
Aye. Do you want to do the roll call?
Yes. Yes.
Aye.
Laurie? Aye. 300. Thank you. Okay. Next on the agenda is an update on the elementary school building project.
Good evening, school committee.
Good evening. Good evening.
So just the last time we updated you on the progress of the project, we just met with the one of the MSBA, the Massachusetts School Building Authority's boards, and two other subcommittees to look at our application, and we have since then been working on their comments. We had another meeting with the MSBA to address some of their concerns and look at the design of the project. And that seems to be going well, and I think we're confident that they're going to recommend that the MSBA board approve our project to go through to the next round. And that meeting of the MSBA board is on June 26th. And in the meantime, we've been working on an education plan, which Andrew has been working on.
Yes, I have the draft edits. This is the third iteration of it's quite a arduous document. It's about 28 pages long. I've added some appendixes to those different sections so that they can see in action what we do. I think it's not always easy to interpret that in writing, so with these added documents, I think it will help them a great deal. So I've just sent the draft to the architects and to the manager of the project, seeking feedback.
So really that's it. The next big event is June 26th, and then we'll let you know how that goes.
27th.
27th? Oh,
Yeah.
I keep saying 27th.
Oh,
I guess.
yeah, I
Yeah.
was
Day of school,
scared.
that's why. Yeah. So once that board made that decision, then we'll be, full steam ahead to the vote at town meeting, and then for hopefully the ballot question in November.
Okay. Does anyone have any questions about that project?
And we are I just got to add is we are scheduled to give an update to the selectmen on Tuesday. We're going to give them an update on the project.
Okay. Okay, thank you very much.
Thank you very much.
Before you go, Michael, I just want to acknowledge all of the work that
Oh,
you,
thanks
this is
very
your
much.
last update for
Yeah,
the
well,
school
you'll-
building
yeah.
project. So I just want to acknowledge
Thank you very much.
all
It's
of
been
the
a
work and
pleasure.
time that you've spent on
Thank
this
you.
project. Thank you. Next on the agenda is the request for senior prom from the class of 2019. Is it extra quiet in here? Hello.
Good evening.
Good evening.
Marissa Smith, co-advisor for the class of 2019.
Justin Schluter, newly elected class president.
Welcome.
That's it.
Yep.
All right. Good evening. Thank you for hearing us. As we said, I'm Justin Schluter. I'm the newly elected class president for the class of 2019. And I was asked to respectfully request the approval of the following date and place for the senior prom. Our planned date and place is May 18th at the Waypoint Event Center in New Bedford from 6 to 11 p.m. However, I'd like to request that we be reheard at the first fall meeting because, one, our venue appears to be too small. The venue is limited in size, so we have to limit the number of tickets sold. This means some students may not be able to attend. Second, I have recently formed a prom committee, and they haven't had any say in the venue. I feel they should have the opportunity to vet out the venue and look at other potential locations. And third, there's only been one person from the council that has visited the venue, and that person is not a member of the council next year. Basically, to summarize, I would like to give the prom committee an opportunity to make a decision on the prom venue for next year, and I request that the committee rehear us at the first fall meeting to rehear our request for a prom venue. Thank you.
Okay. Could I just ask a question? Where is the Waypoint Event Center?
It's in New Bedford.
Is it in a hotel in New Bedford, or is it
It's
just?
right by the harbor.
Okay.
It's like MacArthur Avenue, I believe 124 MacArthur Avenue.
Okay, I was just curious.
You said it's limited. Is there like, do you have a rough estimate of how many people wouldn't be able to attend?
So we have 80-ish kids in our class. I was told, or I was informed, that we can expect 10 more kids to come in our class from next year, because they're coming from Sturgis back to Wareham or some other means. So that puts us around 90. The capacity for the venue is 150. And so we have to cap out, because we have to assume we need a space for chaperones and waiters and people who run the table and the place and the DJ. So we're down to like 130 for our class and kids to go. Any other questions?
Could I defer to Mr. Palladino and ask, is that enough time to plan it?
Well, it's going to be very difficult to find a Saturday event that's not already booked, because it's usually a year out. They're booking weddings, and these venues would much rather have a wedding at their venue because of the money they would make from the bar. So, having an event on Saturday puts us at a disadvantage. Certainly waiting till the fall puts us at an even greater disadvantage.
Has there already been a deposit made and,
No deposit has been made yet.
okay. Okay.
Do you have any other ideas of where you want to look, or are you still in that planning stage?
We've kind of hit the planning stage. We have the Waypoint. We've looked at it. It is definitely a possibility. We don't want to rule it out. So we are okay with looking at this event center. But as I said, the prom committee that was recently put together, they didn't even know about the place. And I want to give them a chance, because it is their job to decide where our venue is, what's going on. So we would be okay with this venue, but I wanted to give them a chance to give their say. And as I said, the council also hasn't been given much info either.
I'd like to add to that, though. There's been a recent change in the council, student council. There were, newly elected. So members of the council have been a part of the planning stage until new members have recently been added. And so there's been a shift and a change. However, this has been discussed with council members as well as several other locations, and this was one that was pushed forward because of cost and location.
Is there a rough estimate of how many kids went last year?
Yes, so the class was roughly about 125 or so, and they sold about 149 tickets. So 20 or so more than the class size. We have a class size of about 85. This venue accommodates 150, 130, 110 very comfortably, so.
Do we have like a rough estimate for ticket cost, or is that too early to say?
We're looking at $65 to $70 for tickets. That's how it's been for the past 20 years. So we're comfortable with that price.
If you pass on this, what's the possibility of not finding a venue?
I wouldn't say it's, like, we can definitely settle for this if nothing else happens. I want to give other people a chance to put in their say, because I feel personally my class, we don't cooperate well, like they don't get the word out, and I want to try to change that so that our class, everyone contributes. That way it's not just a hierarchy of a bunch of people doing everything for everyone. I like everyone to contribute, so I wanted to give them that chance.
I think that's very noble of you. My concern would be, though, if you don't have the vote of the committee to go ahead and make the reservation, and then you waited till the fall and we get you back on the agenda, you could lose out on anything. And I'm sure that you've considered that.
Mm-hmm.
Okay. So you'll have a plan B or C?
Yes.
Okay. Good.
So then we won't be taking a vote tonight?
Yeah, I guess.
Okay, thank you. Next on the agenda is the global education presentation.
Good evening.
Good evening.
So in keeping with the theme of celebration that we started with at the beginning of the meeting, I'd like to continue that theme and talk about a celebration of great work done by the Global Ambassadors, many of whom are here tonight with us from the Global Ambassadors Club, as well as the Global Education team of teachers and administrators and community members, and some of those members are here as well. So global education is nothing new in Wareham. In fact, it's been going on since at least the 1970s, when our own Tony Thatcher and Gina Davis were exchange students in Europe and spent a semester abroad. And Wareham High School has welcomed students from all over the world, right, Mr. Palladino? All over, for decades. And although it's waxed and waned in the past decades, global education has really seen a resurgence in the past 5 to 10 years, particularly in Wareham, but really all over the nation. And that's because educators and community members recognize the essential nature of global education as vital to student success. Global education offers students marketable skills, hard skills, skills in intercultural competence, skills that are going to give them the competitive advantage to succeed and compete in a global economy. It's going to help them with college applications and with jobs that have yet to even be created when they enter the job force. So we are getting on the map in global education, really getting known for this. And one story I wanted to share with you was I was asked to present at Harvard University in April to talk about the work that we're doing in Wareham Public Schools in global education, because educational leaders at Harvard recognized the work of Wareham Public Schools and wanted to know more about what it is that we're doing with our 12 sister schools in 6 continents and our F1 exchange program that we've brought back to the district. While I was there, I was approached by Alan November, and for those of you who know of Alan November, he's an educational guru, a leader in the field, a New York Times best-selling author, and he came up to me and said, "So you're from Wareham?" And I wasn't sure where this was going at first, but he continued and he said, I know exactly what you're doing with global education in Wareham Public Schools. He knew with specificity some of the initiatives that were going on in Wareham in global education. And he mentioned that only other two districts he could think of in the country were Dallas Public Schools and Washington, D.C. Public Schools, two major school districts in the U.S., who had the depth and the breadth and the scope of the work that we're doing in Wareham. So he felt that we were absolutely on the map and a leader in the field of global education. So what are some of the things that we're doing as a district that have put us on the map in global ed? There are many, and I'd like tonight to highlight several of those. So the F1, Federal Student Exchange Program, this was our pilot year, bringing it back to the district after many years dormant. Things have changed. It's through the Department of Homeland Security, lots of rules and regulations and site visits, and we started with a pilot year with 2 students, Sophie and Paul. And actually, Paul is here in the audience tonight. I promised him I wouldn't make him speak, but I would find it very hard to believe if anyone in this room did not know Paul. Because most everyone does. And Paul actually came here several times before he decided he wanted to fill out an application. He just kept coming back to Wareham. There was something about Wareham that he kept being drawn to. So he came to visit us once over the summer with Boston Ivy. We have folks from Boston Ivy here as well, Maggie. Yep. He came to Wareham and just was drawn to it and kept coming back, and then wanted to stay here, to study here, to live here, first with the McCarrans and then with the Palings. So Paul and Sophie, by the way, is in China, otherwise she would be here as well, and she sends her regrets via WeChat that she couldn't be here tonight. But they thrived at Wareham High School. They thrived socially, academically, and their host families, and I know I can speak for Beth and Rick and the Edelstons as well, just absolutely fell in love with them. And Beth even said tonight, he is my own son. He's one of the boys. He's one of the Paling boys now. And that, take it or leave it. That's just the way it is. And they love him. They love their host families, love their host students as family, and that's a lifelong bond. And they loved it so much they decided to sign up again and do it again. So we have not only created lifelong bonds and brought more diversity to our school and assisted our own students in building their intercultural competence by having these interactions with their international peers, but it also has a great financial advantage to the district. So this year we took in $26,000 in tuition to the district. Next year we have 8 students, 7 full-time and 1 trimester student. Those students come from Norway, the Netherlands, Spain, and China. And very easily, we were able to locate host families. Again, the Palings and Edelstons were the first to sign right back up. They loved their experience. So next year, our tuition for those 7 students plus the 1 trimester student is, I wrote this down, $93,500 in additional revenue for Wareham Public Schools. Now this is a significant revenue source, and so it's allowed us to add positions back, add a position to the high school in guidance. Also to offset some of the LEA funds to existing staff who work in global education. But that's not where it ends. So we have future possibilities for other students. As a matter of fact, we have some early projections for 2020. And just from one school alone, one international school who wants to contract with us exclusively because of the work that we do, and because of the recognition, and they follow the school committee meetings, they follow everything that we're doing. We have very savvy international partners. The school wants to contract with us and wants to start with 30 students. So between those 30 students, who we would have to figure out a housing situation, of course, and that's something that we're working on, but we have a year. Between those 30 students from that one international school plus the other partners that we work with, we're looking at the potential to bring in up to $500,000 in tuition for Wareham Public Schools. So wonderful program. And as excited as we are to bring in international students to Wareham Public Schools, we're just as excited to send our students abroad and give our students the opportunity to travel and have that experiential learning opportunity. So we have many students here with us tonight. The students that we have took 2 different types of study tours. So I just want to explain that a little bit. So the current program we have offers 2 different types of study tours. One is a more traditional study tour, but we've beefed up the components of that. We wanted it to have a more educational focus. We wanted it to involve a sister school relationship, so students could start connecting with international peers before a trip. So this year, our trip was to Greece and Italy, and students received pen pal information before the trip so that they could correspond back and forth, and when they got to meet up in Italy, they already had a relationship established. The other type of trip is a short-term exchange program. So this is this group was our first group, the China group, 4 students and 1 principal who went to China. The students lived in host families' homes, and they went to schools with their peers every day. So 2 different types of programs, very similar, but they do have some differences. But I have representatives, student representatives from both groups tonight, who have each prepared very brief a video and a very brief PowerPoint, just a few minutes each, that they would like to share with you about their experiences. So I'll start with Italy, please. And Jamie Reed, I'll ask you to come down off the stage. Thanks. Mrs. Chan.
Hello, I'm Nick Dix. I'm the president of the Global Education Club at the high school. And me and Joshua and Jamie and I believe 7 or 6 other high schoolers went on the trip to Greece and Italy over April vacation. There are 31 people total. And I believe one of the most important skills that I feel that people can... All right.
Sorry.
Yeah.
I turned it on. Yes.
We have, it's fine. We have a video that some of us put together to talk about the trip and our experiences and stuff. So.
Thanks. Wait, you gotta let it.
A better
No.
understanding of the world.
It's not heated up yet.
Okay. Let me just back it up.
Yeah.
There we go. All right, here we go.
One of the most important skills that I feel that people can get from traveling is just getting a better understanding of the world and the people that are in it.
I learned to think about the world in a broader lens. Think about what life's like outside of the United States.
Well, traveling definitely changes people in the sense that it totally changes their perspective of the world. It's outside of their comfort zone and it's good exposure.
My favorite part about the trip was the experience, the new culture, the differences between the language, the food, and obviously the touristy things like going to the Great Wall.
The wall was amazing. Like, there's nothing else like it. I'd say my favorite thing was the people and the differences of our people and their people.
The language was different, so you had to learn how to communicate with them.
Everything was so new and interesting. Like, I just wanted to look at everything and be like, oh, look at that, look at that. A lot of people look at China as this illustrious, magical place. Like, it has fantastic monuments. But when you really get down to it, like, especially in Beijing, it's the biggest city I've ever seen.
My pen pal experience with my Italian pen pals was really fun. Actually, I still keep in contact with them. We have each other on social media. And it's really interesting to have friends that I can go to more than just the United States or in the little town of Wareham where I'm from.
In Italy, people always talk about how beautiful the islands over there are in the Mediterranean and stuff like that. But when I went to Capri and I saw the cliffs and how absolutely ginormous they were, I can't even put it into words. They were beyond my expectations of what it could ever be. We saw at one point Syrian refugees hopping barbed wire fences to try and get into the dockyard and running just so that they could have a better life in Western Europe.
Specifically, it changed me, especially the Syrian refugee episode, because the persistence that these people had.
I see it on the news all the time, but to see it in person, I felt connected.
The fact that even though they failed to get into the building at the boatyard, they still kept trying and trying and trying despite failure.
I mean, acceptance is an important part of everything we do, and especially when it comes to school, there's a certain culture with that, wanting to feel accepted and not wanting to feel left out. And that's hard for a lot of people who come from different places. But if you travel and you get this acceptance, you can do a lot of good things for a lot of people in your career and wherever you go in life, really.
And it helped me gain the experience, so it helped me gain confidence in doing more things than I have before.
It gives me an opportunity to travel again, to visit them and to see what their life is like, especially throughout school and like their cultures.
I think it's helped me come out like more as a person with the confidence and putting myself out there more, and also giving me more of a cultural awakening, if you will, to traveling more and just doing stuff like that.
Well, I've never been outside of the United States besides this trip, so, I mean, it really makes you think about what else there is. What other parts of the country, what other parts of the earth there are.
So that video, it encompassed both the Greece and Italy trip and the China trip. I think for right now we're just going to start with the Greece and Italy trip. So if you guys have any questions about that, and also because I'm the president of the club, if you have any more questions about what the high school does as far as global education, you can go right ahead.
Does anyone have questions?
Hi. Congratulations on your SATs. I was listening with Mr. Palladino at the awards ceremony.
Thank you.
That's great. Traveling to these host countries and such, beforehand, is there a lot of like FaceTime with Skype or something? And we actually get to know some of these students in the other schools.
Well, it was all up to the students to that themselves. My pen pal didn't really communicate with me much, but I know a lot of people like Jillian Rodding. I don't think she's here, but her and her pen pal would talk to each other all the time. And then when they were there, they got along so well. And I think even now they still keep in touch with each other. They have each other on social media and stuff. So I mean, it's pretty crazy how people can make these connections for these trips.
So it's more of a one-on-one thing. It's not like the global ed contingent is going to talk to the other half on the other side of the world at once.
Right, yeah. It's much more one-on-one. We were just given their emails, and then from there, whatever happened, happened.
Yeah. All right. Thank you.
Oh, yeah.
Just to add, that was for that particular trip. It really depends. Like, it's country specific. So for Cape Verde, there was a lot of Skyping. And for example, Mr. Marcos just facilitated a Skype session, was it a week ago or a week and a half ago? About 2 weeks ago, with a sister school in France, in the Normandy region of France, with Mrs. Kirby and Mr. Wilson's classes. So that it really does depend on the country and how involved and invested that particular sister school is. So with this sister school, they were a little less invested than we perhaps would have liked to have been, but we respect their customs and culture, so really country specific and school specific.
And did you go to Beijing?
No.
Oh,
I did
who
not.
went to Beijing?
They're gonna be up
okay,
next,
okay,
so,
all right.
yeah.
Okay, no problem.
It's fine.
So I don't really have a question. I just want to say I'm really impressed with the experiences that you've had. And I'm not sure if I'm more impressed with the experiences or the impact and the appreciation that you students have already with those experiences. It's really great.
Thank you. Yeah, it's the Greece and Italy trip. Well, a lot of these trips they'll have different sort of I don't know what word I'm trying to think of, but like they have different reasons for going, I guess. And a lot of the Greece and Italy trip is a lot of historical stuff there. Especially with Athens and Rome, the ancient cities and whatnot. And one of my favorite parts about it was whenever we went to these places like Pompeii or Vatican City, we always had great tour guides. Is that the word? Yeah, we had great guides, and they were really interesting, and I feel like I learned a lot from going to these places. Like you'll read about them in 7th grade history or whatever, but like going there and actually seeing everything that was built thousands of years ago, it adds a lot to it.
Mm-hmm. Well, it's really great that you're able to make those connections. Yeah, it's really great. From someone who doesn't like to fly, so it's great to hear what those.
Yeah, it was
what
my
I'm
first
missing
time
out on.
flying.
Yeah.
That was fun because we had to. We went from Boston to Istanbul because we were flying through Turkish Airlines, so that was like 10 or 12-hour flight for my first flight ever. So that was it was fun, definitely.
Mm-hmm. Well, it's one thing for us to hear from the staff about the global ed program, but to hear it from you, from all of your perspective and your experiences, it's really important. So thank you for sharing that.
Yeah. Do you guys want to say anything?
It's a great program.
Yeah, it's a lot of fun.
It really is.
Yeah, and on top of that fun, it is, like I said, it's educational, so it's the best of both worlds, really.
Mhm. Absolutely. Good.
Now, the Greece and Italy trip, it dealt with, you had exchange students, right?
Mm-hmm.
So that's different than, say, going to Belize or something, right? That's just like, that's a trip. Like you have, in other words, did you have to organize this with a tour company or anything?
We did. We were accompanied with Lingo Tours, but going back to the students there, we were not with them the whole time. We were only there with them for one day. They were in, oh my God, Gaeta. That's where it was. Yeah, and so on our way between Sorrento and Rome, we stopped in Gaeta, and we were with them for a little bit, and we toured Gaeta with them.
Okay, thank you.
Have you hosted an exchange student here?
No, I haven't.
Okay.
I'm not sure. Has anyone who would have? Well, I know that. Not to call him out, but Matt Paling was on the China trip, and he's one of the Palings, so I'm sure he can talk about the differences and stuff.
Okay, thank you.
Absolutely. All right.
Now we'll have the second group up here, and this is the other type of program that we have. And again, it's the short-term study abroad, where students are actually living in homes, going to school for a longer length of time, and then students also come here to stay in their homes as well. So all of these students have been host families, and actually multiple times, most of them as well.
Introduce yourselves.
Hi, I'm Brooke Chandler.
And I'm Indiana Troop.
Do you guys want to come up and introduce yourselves? That's good.
I'm Matthew Paling. I'm Dylan Turner.
Welcome.
Thank you. So we were the students that traveled to Beijing this past April, and it was an absolutely amazing experience. And I think I speak on behalf of all of us on that. We stayed with host families. So we were in the Daxing region. Yeah.
Beijing, yeah.
Yeah. So we stayed with host families and all in apartments in the middle of the city, which was a little scary at first with language barriers and the obvious things, but it was easy to adjust, and it was an absolutely amazing trip. It was awesome to meet all the new people and to form a great bond with your host family. I'm still in contact with mine. I don't know about the rest of the guys. Are you?
Yeah.
Yeah. But it was a little nerve-wracking at first to be like traveling halfway across the world and staying with these people that we didn't really talk to that much and stuff. And obviously there's that huge language barrier, but as soon as we got there, we were welcomed in just like family, and we were really at home.
And that was my favorite part too. Everyone was so welcoming, and we think of it when Chinese students come here, we think we're doing great, and we go there, and they exceeded my expectations. I know for a fact the principal was so welcoming and trying to engage in conversations with us, our families, the students were talking to us every single chance they had, so they were very welcoming and they were very conversative with us.
Yeah, we were kind of treated like celebrities, if you will. Like, they always gave us candy and water. But, so if you want to start going through that, we can start talking about stuff. So the first day was our travel day, which our flight was what, 12 hours?
Yeah, 14.
Oh, just kidding. 14 hours.
It's a big
very
difference.
long. It was a nonstop. So right from Boston to Beijing. It was a pretty okay flight, for the most part. But yeah.
And we were lucky enough to go over the North Pole. So when you think of going west or east, we went over. So
yeah. So
that was
like
incredible.
Yeah. So we left on Sunday and arrived on late Monday night because time zones. So the next day we were running on a little sleep, and we woke up and we headed to the school to go meet our host families, and we started to talk to them a little more. And then with the entire school, we went to the National Museum, which is like kind of like their Smithsonian, if you will. Like, it has all of their old artifacts, and mostly everything was in Chinese, but there was some little like subtitles on things, and it was really interesting to see all of their artifacts and look at their history. Definitely. So the next day we just had a normal school day. So we kind of got divided from the rest of the school to have more English inclusive classes, if you will. But so it was us and our host families, or host siblings, and we had calligraphy classes, Tai Chi, Chinese traditional classes where they like did chanting poems, all in Chinese, and we learned.
We did physics.
Yeah, we did physics. This really cool like physics mug thing that had something to do with emperors and stuff. Okay, I don't want to do the entire story.
Okay.
And then we learned how to make dumplings, and we learned all about Lunar New Year and Spring Festival and stuff, which is really cool. So this is Thursday. We went to the Daxing Zoo, which Beijing is huge, so it's divided into different sections. And we were mainly in the Daxing region. So we went to the zoo there. We saw a bunch of really cool animals, but that was cool. And then after that, we went to Tiananmen Square in the Forbidden City, which Tiananmen Square is kind of like the Washington, D.C. It has like, I don't know what to call it in our terms, but their government, and the Forbidden City, which is where the emperor used to live when they had that government.
Yeah. And, all right.
Yeah, the Forbidden City was very pretty too. It was all the old architecture, absolutely amazing. It was huge. Do you talk about the Great Wall?
Yeah, so this was our 5th day. This was a Friday, I believe, and this was the Great Wall of China. So when you see the Great Wall of China in pictures, you know it's big and you know it's a great wall. But we're talking, you could walk from Boston to California, and that would be a shorter amount of time than it would take to walk the whole Great Wall. So we're thinking from Boston to California, that's a long way. That's a 6-hour flight, so
Yeah,
that's a long way.
Over 1,000 miles long.
Yeah, it was incredible. So these were some of us on the Great Wall here.
Is it 4,000?
4,000.
But so yeah, the Great Wall was absolutely amazing. It was absolutely beautiful. Like, obviously you see the pictures because it's the Great Wall of China, and it's everywhere, and everyone always talks about, like, oh yeah, it's the Great Wall, but like when you're there, it's like a beautiful, like, mountainous scene, and it just stretches on for like miles and miles and miles, and you
And
like
miles.
tone, and you tone, and all you can see is the wall. Like, it looks never ending, pretty much. It's really cool.
All right, and this was that same day, so we went straight from the Great Wall to the Olympic Stadium in Beijing. So you can see a little glimpse of the bird nest there and the Olympic rings there. That's all 4 of us.
Yeah, from the 2008 Summer Olympics in Beijing, and we got to see they have the wall of all the athletes with like that are painted to like the medals they won, and yeah, it was cool.
And that's more of the Olympic Stadium. Behind us in the picture to the right, you can see the Aquatic Center too. And this was our final day. This was our goodbye party, and it was really sad.
Very sad.
This was, so this picture on the left was me talking to the principal of the Beijing Middle School, number 7. So that was a big deal, and there was a great connection made there. And I've talked to him a few times since I've gotten back, actually, with the principal there. That's with, and these continue on, these are, we're taking pictures, and this was, this was my host sibling, Joe. He loved taking pictures, and he loved showing off that he knew some of the best English in the school too. So he loved taking pictures with us and trying to, I don't know what the word is, but
Socialize.
Yes, he loved trying to socialize with us.
Yeah, it was hard to say goodbye to a family that like you felt like you've kind of known forever because you're just kind of thrown in and they're like right there. But we've all kept in contact, and it was a really great experience to be able to meet them and talk to them and really like share a bond with them. Yeah, thank you so much for helping us get here, and thanks to Boston Ivy for everything, and yeah.
Yeah, a big thanks to Boston Ivy, Maggie in the back. She was incredible, and some of the nights where it was really tough with language barriers or food barriers, whenever it was tough, she was there like, it's okay, I've done this before, you know. And Wendy Wu, who was there for most of our trip, she was incredible too.
Yeah.
So thank you, Boston Ivy.
Yeah, and thank you, school committee. Do we have any questions or anything?
Questions? Congratulations on stepping out and taking advantage of such a great opportunity.
Thank you.
I do have a question I hope I don't regret asking. What was the most surprising thing for you?
There was, honestly, didn't see anything like that was like super surprising. There's obviously like cultural differences. There's a lot more people. It's a huge city, and there's a lot of like, I'm not sure about the other people, but when I was with my host family, we'd like walk through the city and go out to eat and like go to some markets and stuff. And there's a lot of people that like kind of like shove into you and stuff because it's like they have a lot different like common courtesy, like walking in the streets and like the traffic and everything. But there was nothing super different. I was nervous about the food going because obviously like they have a very different diet than we do. But nothing was too extreme. Like we definitely put ourselves out there too with like what we had. Like we had like the Beijing duck, which is this big thing, and that was all very good. And yeah.
And I would say one of the most surprising things was when we were reading I know me and Brooke, and I'm sure these two, Matt and Dylan, we were reading through travel tips before we went for Beijing. And one of the things that we read and one of the things that people were telling us was, don't be afraid if people will take pictures of you or want to take pictures with you. And we didn't think it would be that extreme. We thought it might happen a couple times. And in Tiananmen Square, when we went to, that was the Forbidden City and that day, we had not mobs, but just people surrounding us, wanting to
Yeah.
take pictures with us.
There
And-
was a queue of
Yeah.
people in line to take pictures with us. Just because there's not that many Americans or Europeans that travel to China. And if they are, they just get mixed in with the crowd because there's so many people there. So it's kind of rare for them to see all of these people. And there was actually one family that traveled with us from Needham, I think it was Needham. And they had these, like, there were two families actually. They both had young children that were both like blonde hair, blue eyes, and they were lining up to take pictures with these kids. But yeah, but overall culturally there was a lot of differences, but there was nothing that could really set us apart.
And I don't want to take up too much more time, but I do want to say that when you do go on these trips, or even if you have people coming here, if you're hosting or if you're going somewhere, to try to learn at least some of the language. Before I went, I put a lot of time into trying to learn Mandarin, and I've learned a few phrases and words before I went, and we went there, and it made it a lot easier. And coming back, I'm actually learning some Mandarin through a program online, so that's a big thing too. When you come back, you want to learn about the language, and that's a big thing, to learn a whole nother language just from a trip. So,
Yeah.
yeah.
Okay.
Oh, say a sentence.
Do you want to say something? Okay. Do you want to say something?
I just want to say thank you, school committee, because I had the pleasure of being able to be the chaperone, although we didn't spend too much time together, did we, Matt? Because they were with their host families. But I brought 4 incredibly brave students from Wareham that were ready for anything that was handed to them with the smiles on their face. Right, Matt?
Yeah.
Okay. What do you have to say, Matt?
It was definitely life-changing. It changed everything. Opens your eyes. Yeah, it was so much fun there. It was very similar to here than I thought it would be. I was expecting it to be way different, but there's people, there's buildings, there's cars. That's a city. It was awesome.
Thank you.
And as they say in China, shishi. Thank you.
Thank you all for sharing all of your experiences.
So thank you to all the students. A huge thank you to their parents and guardians for allowing them to have this opportunity, because I think that they are just as brave to send their children across the world to have these experiences. As you said earlier, it's so important to hear from the student's perspective, and we hope that you've heard that tonight. This program changes mindset, it changes perceptions, and it changes lives. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Does anyone have any more questions about Global Ed or the program? Mike?
Just as Ms. Manning pointed out, it's I guess been going on for a very long time. But I guess, before it used to be done by a teacher or two, I'm guessing. Like, so who is Global Ed these days in Wareham? Like, who's the department? No, the people that run it.
So Global Ed falls under the Department of Beyond School Time. So it's one of the many, and I know that we've all had a chance to sit and talk about the umbrella that is Beyond School Time and all of the pieces that fall underneath that. So Global Ed is underneath there, as is English language education, which often goes hand in hand. So yeah, it's under BST.
So how many people, roughly?
So teachers involved in the committee, 25. Students in your club, Nick? Yeah.
Well, you don't have to be in the club.
Yeah, please. Yep.
So you don't have to be in the club to go on these trips. The amount of people that we have in the club, including the seniors that have gone, is probably about like 12 to 15. And hopefully, as the 9th and 8th graders come in, we're going to have more coming in as well. Something interesting about the club, specifically at the school, is that my freshman year, it was run by Mr. St. Julian, and he left after that year. And so Colonel Stanton took on the job of being the advisor with it, and I mean, we had to basically build it back up, and just going from my sophomore year, when there's maybe like 4 people who would definitely be there and who actually knew about it, to coming to where we are now is pretty crazy. And honestly, like, Colonel already does so much for the school. Like he does the JROTC, and he's also the advisor for Key Club. And so the fact that he came in and then he took on this a whole nother club is, it's great, and it's been great for me. I didn't join the club until Colonel took it over because I didn't really know much about it, and so it's helped me grow a lot, and it's helped so many other people grow. And so yeah.
So at each of the different schools, we have teacher leaders, like Colonel Stanton's a teacher leader at the high school, and Ms. Stommer is a teacher leader at the middle school. And we have about 5 to 10 teachers in each building who serve as liaisons, and they each are sort of responsible for one country or one sister school, and they help infuse global education in other teachers' classrooms, and giving them ideas about what they can do with sister schools and how to establish that contact, and how to use what they're already doing with Mass State standards and curriculum and infuse global education in what they already do. Yeah.
And I went to a community global education meeting one time. Most of the time it's only just the high school one, but then I was invited to speak at one of them, and just on top of, there's so many people that I didn't even know who are helped, and they help, do these programs with like the Chinese students who come here, as well as, sending us out to these different countries. And, I wish I could thank all of them, but I honestly, I just saw them that one time at the meeting, and that's it. So there's just so many people behind the scenes doing stuff.
Yeah, that's our global education team.
Yeah.
Thank
So-
you.
oh, go
So
ahead.
just thank you.
So other than the students who you talked about who are coming here next year, what else is Global Ed planning for next year? Trips or?
Okay. I'll go first.
Okay.
So we have the 8 students coming here for the F1 exchange. We also have several short-term exchange programs, which we do every year. So we have Mr. Lee's school. They are connection we have through Maggie and Wendy Wu and Boston Ivy, and they come to Minot every year. They've done it for several years in October, sometimes in December. So we're expecting them. We're expecting a sister school to come to the middle school. They come every year from Suzhou, or SJZ is the abbreviation. And then in March, we're really excited to welcome back our sister school from Cape Verde, because it's been 3 years since they've been here. So we're really excited to have them back and continue that exchange. So we have 3 short-term exchanges, the 8 students who are the long-term exchanges, and then we have a couple of other programs going on. So we have the April vacation Eastern European tour with our sister school in Graz, Austria. That's April. And then we hope to have another Sydney exchange. So there'll be more information about that coming out. But the first Sydney exchange is happening this June, part 1, with 5 students traveling to Sydney for 2 weeks in June. Those 5 girls will be at Wareham High School in end of August, beginning September, also for 2 weeks. And then we hope to have a second version of that program late spring, early summer next year.
Okay.
Yeah.
And
And
how
then
did the-
I'm hoping, and I don't want to speak for Maggie, but I'm hoping that they'll be running another April Vacation Beijing program as well. Maggie? Yes, they will. Okay.
So how do the students in our schools, how do they find out about these opportunities in the schools?
Sure. So the principals announce it on a daily basis in their buildings, and that's how these students found out about the programs, the opportunities. They're actually, I think you are one of the announcers on the morning. Are you the morning show guy?
Yeah.
So you're one of the people who are responsible for announcing it, as well as morning and afternoon announcements. They have it, and then on Facebook page etc.
And the club itself, it meets every other Thursday.
Mhm.
And on top of that, we'll usually, specific to the tours, we'll usually have informational meetings. Like there was one a few weeks ago about the Eastern Europe trip, just getting a head count of people who would be interested, and giving them information on it and all that kind of stuff.
And there was one tonight right before this meeting that Ms. Dahmer ran.
Okay, thank you.
Thank
Does anyone
you.
else have any questions?
Just to go on, sorry.
Sure.
There's some stuff that the Global Ed at the high school does that isn't really part of the community. We try to do, once a month, we'll do these global awareness themes. And so for 1 week during the month, we will go on the announcements in the morning, and we'll give some facts about a specific thing. Like 1 month might be Arab American history, or Native Americans, or Chinese, and so we've been doing that, where we'll announce facts throughout the week. And then what we're hoping to add on next year is that at the meeting that happens during that week, we'll have sort of like a festival type of thing, where we'll get food or decorations from that specific heritage that we're appreciating, and then we'll have people meet there who want to come for that and all that. And then there's also in this last April, we had a Project Thirst presentation, and the Thirst Project, I think is what it's called. And so, they do a lot of stuff with supplying clean water to places that need it.
Mm-hmm.
And so there was a presentation for that in April, and the feedback from it was amazing. I feel like everybody that I've talked to really enjoyed it. And something that can kind of be a problem is getting people, when they're all in the auditorium for a presentation, getting them to sit down and be quiet and listen.
Mhm.
It doesn't happen very often, but that happened when the Thirst Project was here. And so we're hoping to move on and do more with the Thirst Project. I'm in contact with one of the people who came to speak at the presentation, and hopefully also take that out to the community as well, and not just in the high school, and do fundraising activities for them as well.
Wow, well, congratulations on all the hard work that you're doing.
Thank you.
Does anyone have anything to add? Okay, thank you very much.
Thank you so much for your time. Thank you.
Next on the agenda is the food service report from Mr. Shaheen. Don't worry, Rob, I'm not leaving.
Sorry. Well, thank you for having me here tonight. I just got to get my technology up to speed here. So I'm Rob Shaheen. I'm the Director of Food and Nutrition Services for the Wareham School District. And I'm here to bring fresh back into the cafeteria. So what we've done this year, just in the past few months, is I was able to get a summer grant for the summer food service program. And I used some of the money to buy 2 growing systems, one at the middle school and one at the high school. And so these are organic growing systems that are super fast growing of some different types of vegetables. And you can see there's 3 bays there. There's a lighting system over each one. And I was amazed at how fast and how much product we were getting out of each system. So as you can see here, we have at each school, there's Pam at the high school who's clipping on basil. There's also Red Leaf, Encore, and Black Seeded Simpson lettuce that we have that we're using for some of the menu items. The chef, Joe, there is at the middle school using some of the product too, and then I have Beth at the middle school, I'm sorry, Joe at the high school, Beth at the middle school, picking up some of the products. So they're as you can see, the first bed there and the second, as they start picking the vegetables and stuff and using them, they start to grow back again instantly within the next couple days, or the next morning in some cases. So
Really?
I was pretty amazed at that, and so was in the staff. They were having a hard time keeping up. So basically what happens is we'll just cut it right off there, go right to the sink, just wash it lightly, and then go right to the line and start using it. That's Beth at the middle school putting together some lettuce for some of the products that she has on the deli line there. If students want to get just a salad or a salad with a protein or something in their sandwich, we'll put it right in. So some of the other fresh projects that I'm working on is I want to get one of these systems at the Deacon School. And we put it's set up right on the line. So when the students come into the cafeteria, into the line to get a meal, they can see it growing right there, and they can see the staff going over and actually picking it. And they think that is awesome. It just adds a whole dimension to the food service program and how we're offering more fresh products. So I also invested some of the money from the grant for the summer program to continue to work on 2 gardens that we did last year. We did a garden at the middle school in the courtyard, working with Maria Ferreira, and she's bought some, this year we have blueberries, strawberries, I think a cherry tree, and a whole bunch of other things she's gonna grow there, lettuce and tomatoes, and I think carrots, cucumbers. So I said, whatever she has that we can use, we'll incorporate during the summer, and then when we get to the fall, if there's stuff that's left over, we'll use that too. I also, in collaboration with 2 local farms, one in Middleborough called the Soul Homestead Education Center, and this is kind of funny because I didn't realize when I had worked with them through Farm to School, an organization in Massachusetts that helps partner schools with farms. And when I was there, they were telling me that they would actually have a field trip from Deacon was going there that week. So it was great that the farmer could show the students that, hey, this is what we're growing for your school. You're going to be eating this in a couple weeks. So it was pretty amazing. And then Bay End Farm is actually right off Route 6, just down the road there in Wareham. It's another farm that they kind of work hand in hand. If one farm doesn't have enough product, then I'll go to another farm and see if I can get some product there too. So with all this new fresh product, there comes some training that has to happen with the staff. They do a great job with what we have, but I'm really going to focus this year coming up on bringing more chefs and recipes into the cafeteria and do some demonstrations on how to use the product and elaborate more on the menu. So I'm planning to do that in the fall. I have the Humane Society does a lot of great things with training and chefs and partnering with schools with fresh products, things that we have. I showed them the garden that we had going on, and they were just amazed. So it was pretty. It was nice to see that they're excited to come and work with us. The UMass Extension program that we had both at Deacon and Minot, I'm hoping that will continue again this year at both schools. I think it's been an amazing thing to have the students go through the program. For every couple weeks, they would learn about a different vegetable or fruit. And so what we did is we sent them samples, real life samples that they could touch, taste, smell, all that stuff. And then we tried to incorporate it in the cafeteria for the rest of the student body. If they hadn't, one week it might be carrots, another week it might be beets. So everyone had an understanding through the whole process during the year of what they were doing or what we were offering. So that worked out really well. And then I have in the works, it's not guaranteed yet, but I'm pretty close. There's a new fresh fruits and vegetable grant worth about $40,000 for the elementary schools. And what that is that'll give us more money to buy more fresh fruit and vegetables to offer during like a snack time at school. So in between breakfast and lunch, or maybe in the afternoon, we could have free fresh fruit and vegetables and offer it like on a cart, or maybe during recess or something. So I'm still working out the details on that, but I figure to get the money first and then worry about how to use it after. So this is just another picture at Deacon. We had a bunch of the fresh lettuce from one of the farms, and they thought it was great to show the students that that was the lettuce that they saw in the fields when they were there on their field trip, and that was what we're going to use to make some stuff. And I forgot, and I left the the salads at Deacon's, but I'll share them next time that I come back as samples. But they made up a couple of they use that to make lettuce wraps with chicken, Oriental chicken, and rice, and it was on a bed of lettuce. The students were, at the elementary level, they were really excited. They thought it would look great, and it was fresh. So that's kind of the direction that I think the food service department is heading, more fresh options. You know, we are investing our whatever funds that we have into that type of the menu items, along with some equipment and so forth, but I'll do a more extensive report later on before the fall, after I finish up the year. But what we're doing very well, and I got to thank the staff at all the schools for really working hard and trying to make an impact for students in terms of the food and nutrition that we offer each day to the students. Any questions?
I just want to say, wow, school lunch has really come a long way. Like,
It has, and you know, I kind of hate to admit it that we're a little behind, you know, I think, and when I look at some other districts, and I'm trying to catch up, you know, I think over the past 3 years I've been here, first try to get the program, you know, kind of organized and figure out, you know, where everyone eats for free, breakfast and lunch, it's great, but utilize and how to make money so that we can invest it back in the program and offer more products. And so we're at a point where we're really can do that, and just I'm going to really focus on staff and training and taste testings and get them more involved with the students to offer more things like this.
some of us were at the high school for the senior breakfast, and Mrs. LaPerriere was very excited to take us back and show us some of the plants that, it's amazing. Yeah.
It's great. We're gonna actually move that system. We have it in the back, but I have to set it up so it's right behind the line. As the students come in, I just got to get some electrical work done, and then they'll be able to see it better. At the middle school, it's great. It's right there as they come in, so it's a lot of fun for the kids to see, because it's, you know, even at the library, the garden that I have there, the students who were participating last year, you know, we were talking to them about, you know, what the things that we were growing, and we're asking them questions, you know, where do you think a cucumber comes from? And one of the students said, well, doesn't that come from an animal? And I was like, no, well, you know, we grow it in the ground. And they were like, in the dirt? So, you know, it's a real educational piece for students to understand where the food comes from and you know, how important it is, and to offer more fresh products.
That's awesome. Mike, did you have something?
No, I was actually just going to say exactly what Joyce said. She was so happy to bring us back here and show, and super jealous that your basil is much better looking than my basil.
Yeah, it's been a hot commodity, so I know, and it grows like wildfire. I mean, it's you pluck it, and next day it's coming up again. So it's a really great system. I was surprised on how quick, and so you know, we're trying to keep up with it, which is great, a great problem to have.
So yeah, that is great. It has come a long way. I don't know how you do it. Which leads me to another question. Now, how much staff do you have?
So right now, we, with the changing of the schools and districts, so we have about 18 staff members. And
18 staff members.
3 managers.
And three managers.
So there's about 21 employees throughout
Right.
the 3 schools for next year.
Yeah, and you guys are so self-sufficient, you know, so we don't really deal much with your budget. How big is your budget?
So the budget is probably a little over $1.5 million a year is what we're taking in, and maybe $1 million, $1 million, $2 million. But I'll have more details of that when this year ends. Last year we did good, so you know, we're positive over a couple $100,000, which is good, and so we're trying to put that back into the program.
So 22 employees?
21, 22 counting.
21. $1.5 million budget. It's about what our busing is, and I'm told you don't even have a secretary.
Not yet. I'm working on it.
Wow. So how do you do it?
I have, like I said, I have a great staff. They really help make the job easier. Just being organized, try not to take on too many things. But I work, you know, to get the job done. I'm here to serve students, you know, and feed children, and it's been a passion of mine since I've been here in the past 3 years. I worked in the restaurant business for over 30 years and didn't get anything back for
Yeah.
that, you know. So this was a huge life change for me, and I really love working with the people and working with students like, you know, Indiana Troop. Been a great asset.
Great.
So I'm looking to get more help. He's moving up to the high school, so, you know, he's going to have more work involved with helping us out, so.
That's great. Thank you.
Thank you, Ron.
Thank you.
Next on the agenda is the athletics spring report.
Good evening. Spring season, we had some nice highlights from, first with the girls tennis team making the state tournament for the first time in a long time. He did a great job with the team, and a lot of young girls on the team, and hopefully it's going to even get better. We had a couple of league champions in Bradley Hrunkowitz and Taylor Gerbage, and Taylor Gerbage ended up winning the Division IV state championship in the high jump. The girls track team and boys tennis team won sportsmanship awards. That's the sixth team throughout the year that has won a sportsmanship award for the conference. Wareham is the Wareham champion as far as the sportsmanship for the award for the league. That's quite an accomplishment. The athletes of the year were Isaac Nascimento and Gabriella Francois. And the other thing that always amazes me is the GPA for all the teams is 89.1, which is it's really amazing to me. That's quite high, and it's a tribute to the coaches and the players and everybody involved. Any questions?
Does anyone have any questions? No? How do you, the eighth graders moving over to the high school next year, how will that affect the athletic program?
I think it's going to go very well. I was very pleased. We had sign-ups last week, and it's gone very, very well. And I'm hoping that by them being at the high school and getting involved at an early age, that will keep a lot of them there. And I think it's going to help. I mean, I can see it already. The sign-ups went much better than usual.
Mm-hmm. Were eighth graders already eligible to play all sports at the high school, or just some?
Yes. Well, I had to put in a waiver for, at first it wasn't all the sports, and then in the end it became all the sports.
Okay.
And it's really helped us. But now I'm really hoping that's going to put us in so we have constantly JV teams and hopefully maybe in the future freshman teams.
Mm-hmm.
I think having them in the building, you know, we've released that barrier, so to speak, where, you know, they'd have to walk over from the middle school, kind of feel a little disenfranchised because they're not in the building. So I think we've kind of disposed of that barrier. So now they're in the building, and as Ed said, I think they're going to be more inclined to participate in all of the programs, not just athletics, clubs, activities. So we're really excited to get them on board.
Okay. Does that mean that then does the line drop down, so now seventh graders could get waivers for seventh graders?
Well, we are in two sports, field hockey and girls tennis. I'm trying not to do that, but girls tennis actually did extremely well with a lot of eighth graders and seventh graders. And field hockey is just to fill in so we can have a JV team. Our goal hopefully is not to include them, to be honest with you. I'd rather just have the high school kids, but you know, to make it so that we have a team, we might have seventh graders in a couple of sports.
Mm-hmm. Okay. And as far as the expenses on the spreadsheet, were there any big differences between last year? I'm sorry I didn't compare it to last year, but are there any differences?
It's pretty consistent. It depends too on the numbers. The girls track team was higher than normal because they didn't have as many participants.
Mm-hmm.
Otherwise, it's basically status quo. You know, within a few dollars here and there, but and it doesn't change much, unless I order a lot of uniforms and things of that nature.
Okay. But you do that more on like a rotating basis anyway?
It has a schedule.
Yeah.
And basically, well, you could share it.
Excuse me. Sorry. Yeah, I have a schedule here, and when I first got here 5 years ago, there was no such schedule, and a lot of our teams were in dire needs of uniforms. A lot of teams were buying their own uniforms, which I thought was is not right. So we've gone on a schedule, and it's worked out pretty well. The only team that I haven't gotten uniforms yet for is girls tennis, and they will be getting them this winter, and they will be the last team. And now we'll start again with field hockey was the first team that I did when I got here in August that year. They only had, I believe it was home uniforms. I didn't even know that, and it was we're going to the games. Where was your uniforms? This is all we got. So I had to call the other schools and say, we can only wear white. And so I made sure that was the first thing we bought, but that didn't come until like the season was over. And then now we're on a rotation. So girls tennis, and it's going to start with field hockey again next year.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you.
Mike?
Yeah. All right, so I was reviewing the community service items.
Yeah.
And I noticed, for example, baseball, community service, they did a clothes drive for the Red Cross and the Salvation Army. Girls tennis, for example, they cleaned up Lopes Field and Onset, and both of those are really commendable. And then I see something like, the softball community service they helped out at an opening day for the Wareham Recreational Softball League. Does that really count to just like?
Well, they were there all day. I mean, they sold food. They sold food. They helped out with the organization of things. They were there. They weren't just there for like an hour or so.
No, but I mean for community service. I mean to just like go to another sport and help out at a sport.
We've had community service done by running camps. I mean, community service, it's pretty wide open, but I think it's great for the for the students, that potential future athletes, to see those kids in that light, helping out, being there all day, and making a commitment on a Saturday for about 8 hours. I think it's kind of in the eyes of the coach and the team in regards to what they decide to do.
All right. Now the transportation, is that funded at all from the non-net? Is it totally from like activity fees and stuff?
Well, it's all thrown in together. I mean, the transportation, that is, when we have our own bus drivers and buses, it's pretty good. It's just when we have to go outside the system, the fee goes way up.
But we are not subsidized, to answer your question. It's
That
paid for
was
out of the
my
athletic
question.
budget.
Yes.
It is out
yes.
what's out of the
That's all
athletic
part of it,
budget.
And it's broken down into 2 line items. One is for the salaries and one is for the gas.
But that is the LEA budget, right?
Yes.
Because often when this comes up, parents kind of get a little mad because they say, well, why can't we have after-school buses? Yeah, we can pay to have the athletic, teams, bused all over the place. And the argument's always been, well, that's athletic fees. The students pay for that, and it doesn't come out of the school's budget. But actually, it does, to some degree.
Right. And, we want to keep all the students in the building.
No, I hear you.
But you have to offer these programs. We're competing with a lot of schools.
No, I hear you.
Close
It's just
proximity.
that I always assumed it wasn't. I never actually did the math, and it didn't add up. So I'm like, I guess people had a point. But
Right, and that's kind of, if you go back to the history of why user fees were put in place,
Yeah.
it was really, and I happened to be coaching at the time, it was to pay for the transportation fees because it was getting very expensive to try and
Yeah.
cover that within the budget.
yeah. And now to Mr. Rogers, because I know you've already discussed this, but I have to ask, why did the track get so out of hand before it was brought to the school committee's attention?
What do you mean? The track itself?
The track itself, yeah.
It's been usable, let's put it that way, and then it's gotten to the point where it needs to be repaired. We're in the process of trying to do that. There might be some money free to just Band-Aid it up for now, so to speak, so it's usable. It's still usable, but I mean, that's make it more usable. And then the last thing is we're going to put in for the Preservation Act, hopefully $100,000 or so, and we'll get it refunded. It's just a lot of money to do something like that. The project is very, very intense. And it was done, I guess, 10 years ago, before I was here, and it's just deteriorated. It's used not just by the track team, it's used by, if you walk by there every night, there's people using the track.
No, it was a surprise to you, Mr. Palladino, and it was a surprise to us. I just wish it wasn't a surprise at the last minute that all of a sudden it's in really dire need of repair.
It wasn't a surprise. It's
Yeah.
been an issue for a few years. We've been discussing internally. It may be a surprise because it was presented to you in the format it was presented, but it's been an issue that we've been taking pictures of and speaking with Mr. McMillan in the business department to kind of just say, this is going to be an issue. But 10 years is the average life of a track, unfortunately. So, Mr. Gardner presented, I think, an awesome proposal to add some more fence to the area so we can minimize the vehicles that are allowed access to that track for some different venues. So I think it's gonna, I think we'll probably get about 15 years out of it the next time through when we put those fences in.
Okay.
And
Thank you.
and I've talked to Ms. McMillan several times over the years about money for the track. It's just, it's a lot of money. It's not like, $2,000 to fix it. So.
Yeah, it needs to be brought up at like the all-day budget meeting or something. We need to know about this before it gets like this.
Yeah, there's a lot of, that type of maintenance work that needs to be done. I'm sure not just in the track, but in all the buildings as well.
Thank you.
It's important to point out, and you did say, that it's not just an athletic field.
Right.
It's a community space, which is
Exactly.
why
Right, it's
we're
used
hoping
much
that
more
it's
by, as
eligible.
you know, by the community than, when you add up the number of times
Yeah.
we're on it for track meets, I think it's only about 2 or 3 days worth of meets,
Yeah.
obviously more practices,
Mhm.
and then the community's on it. It's amazing the
Every
use
day.
it gets. It's
Yeah.
awesome, and that's what it's all about.
Mhm. Mhm. Okay, thank you.
Okay, thank you.
Okay. I think it went too long.
So next is the Wareham High School Code of Conduct Handbook for next year.
Yes, so I want to thank Ms. McCarron for reformatting this. It's quite a process. I think it was about 20-something hours at the busiest time of the school year, so I appreciate the work she did on that. The English department and Ms. Freitas for going through and making sure there were no grammatical errors, proofreading, and we're excited to have, I think, a user-friendly document. And, the only change from the last presentation was we did put in on page 11, J was added back as was requested. So I'll answer any questions that you may have on the new format. But there really weren't any changes other than page 11, we added J back into the mix there.
Does that have to do with student IDs?
Correct.
So students will continue to wear IDs?
That's the plan.
Okay. Okay, so that's under dress code.
I'm sorry?
That's under dress code? Is that what that?
Page 11, 2, letter J.
Mm-hmm. Okay. Yes, so thank you. It made a huge difference,
Great.
the changes that have been made. So thank you to everyone who had a part in that.
Thank you.
Does anyone have any questions? All right, could we have a motion to approve the handbook?
The second.
All those in favor? Mike?
Aye.
Laurie?
Aye.
Aye. 300.
Thank you very
Thank
much.
you.
Thanks.
Next is the report of Dr. Schwam.
Close the computer. Good evening.
Good evening.
So when I went to Beijing for my first time, I was very surprised by the attention I was receiving about getting photographed. So I decided at that point that I was going to change my name to Jennifer Aniston while I was there, because you really do feel like a rock star, right? The attention is just kind of overwhelming. And I've indicated to many teachers that if you want to if you want to appreciate who you are in your profession, you will definitely be appreciated when you go to China. It's like a red carpet is laid out for you as you're welcomed and you're respected and honored for what you do, which is a little bit different than what happens here in the United States for our profession. So if you need a good boost for your self-esteem, it's not a bad plan.
You know what, that reminds me of a question. You talk about changing your name. I have a question that I didn't ask before. When the students come here, they change their names to American names. Is that because they think we want them to? Or because do they want to do that?
I think they want to, and they want to make it easy for the communication barrier.
Okay, all right.
I always wondered that too.
Yeah.
But
because I would have been happy to call them by their
I think it
names.
depends on the country, really, that you come from. Some and how they feel about their name and what it means to them.
Mhm.
Some other countries are much different about making sure that you call them by their name. So I think it just depends.
Okay, thank you.
Sure. So good evening, everyone. I'm here to do the end-of-year report. I want to first thank you for having me, and secondly, apologize for the errors in the report that I sent on Friday. I don't know, I had it to Michelle early, which I was very proud about. However, there were some typos, and Joyce had read over the report, thank you very much for that, and brought to my attention a number that I thought, oh. And then when I went back to look, I realized that it was a typo, and so I went and I made some changes, and I checked the tables, and I thought maybe I can make them a little bit easier and less arduous. Nonetheless, the most recent version that was sent out today is with the corrections and the correct information. It didn't change the outcome, but by 1 percentage point for grade 1, the last table, which is the last page of your report. So, anyway, I apologize. There's just too much going on. So basically, the reason why we do these assessments is to inform our instruction, which is really, really important. Often, assessments in general have been used for summative purposes. MCAS is one of those assessments, Next Generation MCAS, end-of-unit test, a final exam, and SAT. Those are all like summative, and they put you in a bucket, basically. But if we can gather assessment information early, and the assessment system that we use through FAST allows us to do that because it's all generated on the computer, we know exactly where students are when we assess them, and we can then make decisions based on that information, which is extremely useful. Everything that we have put in place has been a result of the FAST collection since we started this implementation 4 years ago of providing the FAST assessment. The objective overall is to gather data to effectively inform instruction so that students in Wareham have the necessary reading skills to fulfill the Wareham Public Schools vision. To do this, students must be able to read at grade level and above. There is no ifs, ands, or buts about it. They cannot effectively contribute overall in any subject if they can't read. It's in all the research over and over again. And we know that there are certain skills at certain age levels that kids need to have in order to be able to do that. So our focus now is to spend a lot of time working on those particular skills. In your packet was proficiency data for grades K1, 2, 3, grade 4, some growth from fall to spring. For FAST literacy, some historic FAST growth by cohort. I added the end of year information, so it's very similar to the packet you received at mid-year, hopefully establishing a sense of pattern so that it becomes easier to read over a period of time. And then the chart, I included some math information in there as well, the growth over time, and then a chart, the current growth and proficiency in literacy for grades K through 4. So this was the outcome. As you know, actually, no, you don't know, because I don't think you were on the committee. Oh, maybe a couple of you were at the beginning of the year, because there are new members. But I announced, I think in October, when Kim was in China, I believe, for that meeting, so I was sitting there and also doing my assistant superintendent report, that we would reach 90% proficiency, right? And we didn't make 90% proficiency, but we did pretty well. So I have to say that if you look overall and compare us to previous years, we are on track to meet 90% easily next year. Now in kindergarten, we did really well. In grade 1, I would say 80% proficiency is strong, as well as grade 2. And as you can see, there's a bit of a decline, although they really pushed it in grade 3, and grade 4 is a little bit more difficult. Now, what I don't want you to do is look at this chart and assume that the teachers aren't doing their jobs at each grade level, because it's just not true. What happens is that we get the largest amount of growth with younger students. because we've got them right out of the gate. As students get older, they start to develop habits of mind. It becomes harder for them to wrap their minds around the concepts that are being addressed with them, and they always have to go backwards because the skills that they needed initially weren't embedded in they weren't fluent. So if they don't know how to decode properly, or the vocabulary has suffered as a result, then when they are exposed to other material in that grade level, they have to go backward to try to figure that out. They have to start to decode, they have to look up the word. So anything that they're trying to take in at that point, they just can't. And it becomes much more difficult. So we did have significant turnaround, if you see, from 57% to 66% from January until today is a huge difference in where they were as to where they are. And as you see the groups move up, the second grade group at 80% literacy rate will go into third grade. So they're now no longer at a deficit, right? We've identified where kids may still have some problems. We can get to them immediately, right out of the gate. There's no wait time. And we'll see a shift in the overall literacy rate for the district as we continue with this work. So what I did notice, though, as I was looking at the data, is that we do really well September to January. The jump from where we begin to that point is huge overall. And that it seems to decline a bit from January to June. And so we're looking deeply at that. We've just had a meeting with the principals, assistant principals of Deaconess, Minot, and the middle, because we're going to start doing some of this work in grade 5 for these grade 4 students, because we still need to catch them up, right? Mm-hmm. So we're going to continue that work, and we're looking at how to plan appropriately so that we can maintain the level of energy and rigor necessary to stay with the upward results overall. So we're looking at that. Raising expectations will be commonplace. I'm going to be looking for kindergarten to reach level 6 rather than a level 4, right? The DRA says 3. 3 is not enough. It doesn't do enough. So we're gonna shoot for the moon, and we're gonna keep shooting for it, because the more the kids know, the better they're going to be. And so I don't think we should ever rest, to be honest. And people who know me know that's to be true, which can be good and bad, but nonetheless, I think it's extremely important. But it's worth celebrating, right? We have a lot to be proud of right now. Our teachers have a lot to be proud of. They've put their time in. The kids should be very proud of their work. The families that have supported our work should be extremely proud of where we're heading. We're offering the Boost program again this summer for 5 weeks. We start that July 9th. It goes until August 9th. We have 2 kindergarten teachers who will be heading that up, who know the program very well. And we had, when we first started last year, we were begging people to come, right? Please bring your kid. This year we had to say, whoa, slow down. So it's already, in a very short period of time, parents have realized, or families have realized, that this is really important work and their children are learning, and I believe that they're excited about that. So we're just going to stay the course, really. We don't plan to change anything at this point, but we're definitely going to stay the course and hopefully do it even better with different structures, and that we think will help maintain the rigor throughout the whole entire year. So I thought it was important to look at this chart because it's kind of amazing to me. So it's looking at kindergarten, and this were the results from 2014 and 15. We had implemented FAST that year, and these were the end of year results in 2014 and 15 for growth. So you see, is it 74, that number? Mm-hmm. So you see that number 74. And now that red is at 32%, which is amazing. Mm-hmm. And if you follow that through to grade 1, so they have the results there are even more incredible, which is 2 years now of this work. And to see 56% of our students in blue, that means they're exceeding growth expectations right now. It's just amazing. So I'm very excited for our students overall.
Well, and if you follow it from the year, where they were the year before.
Which you have in your packet. I did them
Right,
both ways.
I see it. And yeah, I mean, the growth is huge.
It's huge.
Mm-hmm.
And I just take this right from the FAST data, right online. I don't do anything big with it. With the other data, the proficiency data, I count and color and code, and hence why there are mistakes, because it's human error. But I really, really particular about that. This is just really screenshots from the information that FAST gathers and quantifies and provides us this information. So it's pretty awesome. Are there any questions?
Go ahead, Mike.
Yeah, I just didn't know when to butt in, but I mean, I want to clap. I mean, it's impressive. It's exciting. It's amazing. Have we seen it translate to MCAS?
That's an interesting question, because I'm not sure yet. And because we started this work, this was our first full year. We started halfway, mid-year last year, kindergarten, right? And so what I'm interested to see is that, particularly if you go back to this chart, right? I want to see the 3rd grade English scores. And I'm going to measure them against the students. I want to see the percentage of students that met and exceeded, or even partially met, right, overall, and see if there's a relationship between this information and that information. It's really a different measure, because MCAS is standards-based, this is skill-based, but I still think that we'll be able to translate the level of skill with their ability to reach the standard when we look. So I'll have to look more closely, but I would assume, just logically, that it would.
Yeah, I would assume too, but if it doesn't, then what would that tell you? And you might have already answered the question with the whole skills versus, standard and stuff, but in my mind, if it didn't translate, I wouldn't necessarily think that it's a teaching issue, but more of an alignment issue. Maybe we're not aligned enough to the MCAS or with the curriculum. Your thoughts on that?
Well, my thoughts on the MCAS you probably don't want to hear, to be honest. It's one test, one day. I think it's given way too much time and energy, and in my opinion, it's really not provided a wealth of information for our students overall as human beings. So I analyze it like crazy, though. Believe me when I tell you, I also appreciate data, and I use it for what it's going to give me and try to provide the proper tools so that people can be successful. But great teaching practices, interdisciplinary approaches, making real-world experiences available to our kids, enhancing student voice and agency within our schools, those are the places where I think will make the biggest difference. I mean, the Global Education Department and what they're doing with our students is just amazing. The International Baccalaureate and the way in which they deliver curriculum. There's so much to it, but I will spend a significant amount of time, I'm not saying that I won't, analyzing those results. I mean, I was analyzing another district today and comparing them to us from last year. I do it all the time, but I think we need to put it in its right place, too.
Now you mentioned, the global education and the International Baccalaureate, but those kids tend to be at the top anyway, and they're going to do well anyway, right? So.
What do you mean?
As far as like International Baccalaureate?
No, they're all kids.
That's not a slightly accelerated program?
Well, in theory, it's supposed to be slightly accelerated, but it's available to everyone, and everyone should take advantage of the opportunity. So no one is excluded from the opportunity, and we've sent the special education department chair to training. So to IB training, because it is really what it used to be and what it is now is very different. So the IB used to be sort of like an exclusive program, but when Sturgis came on the scene, they changed the rules, and IB has done a lot of research on their particular methods, particularly in communities of poverty, and they've learned a lot from that research, that if we empower students with the delivery, right, we listen to them as we are teaching them and ask them to think and really have interactive type dialogue within our classrooms more often, that it actually enhances everyone's experience in the school. So I'm saddened that it still carries that semblance of a reputation, but if I had it my way, all classes would be IB and AP. I wouldn't have any others, because the expectation is that our kids need to know this stuff. So that's just my philosophy.
We're going to do that? Anyway.
Well, we have a lot of students signing up for both of those classes, so we're in good shape.
Let me ask you this about the kindergarten and the growth and such. Do you have the data? Have you paid attention to the data of, I know like Wareham, I think we allow kids to start kindergarten 2 months earlier than a lot of districts. Have you seen anything? Do those kids struggle more? Or?
I think Mrs. Chandler actually has a really good answer to that question, because she's addressed it head on. So do you want to come up? I know that we've had discussions about it.
Good evening, school committee. To answer your question, Mr. Flaherty, I do believe it was 3 school committees ago that Mary Morgan asked that question. We did do the research. I can send that to you again, but the correlation to that, we haven't found the data to be true. Yes, in some cases, developmentally, but we haven't seen any significant change.
So academically, not much difference, but what do you mean when you say developmentally?
Well, like when children are young, whether they're 4, they do go through developmental stages. It's just part of our learning of human development. So our students come with us with all different skills. Some 4.9s come in with a skill set ready at mid-kindergarten. Others come in younger. It just depends on their experiences, what they've been, if they've been through preschool, their family dynamic. There's a lot of factors.
But the 2 months, that doesn't seem to be much of a factor.
Yeah, and I don't know, I mean, how I'd have to do the research to look at what districts, I think there are some districts that even go later than our cutoff date.
Okay, all right, thank you.
Thank you.
So I think it's interesting to compare the data for the same cohort.
Mm-hmm.
So what can you tell me about that? Like, what do you see when you look at that?
I see growth, but I also see a steadying of that growth as kids get older, right? So I see this sort of upward movement, and then I see it flatten a bit as I look from cohort to cohort. And I think after I see those things, I say, okay, what is it that we need to do about that, right? What can we do about that? And so this year, when we had Carrie Thurston come in with her brain-based, research, we had her come all the way to grade 4, right? So she works K to 4, and now she's moving up to grade 5. And it was because of that pattern that you see this sort of flattening out of the intensity of the growth, that we need to step it up a little bit in those areas, but we won't have to do that for long because the kids coming through are in good shape. Do you see what I mean? So it shouldn't necessarily be like that forever. They'll be where they need to be as far as this measure is concerned, and we know that they're in really good shape to be strong readers and learners, and they're ready to go. So that's what I see.
Okay. And just one more question. It transfers over, say, to math. I know you gave us data on math. So do you see that transfer happening in other
I
areas?
see some pretty amazing things happening,
Mhm.
particularly as the transition from first to second grade. And then they're doing second grade transitions to the Envision program. So kindergarten and first grade do the Deanna Jump math program,
Mhm.
which is a lot of hands-on materials, and they voted for these programs. Basically, we piloted them, and then we did a whole vote of all the staff, and this was what was decided. And interestingly, kindergarten initially did really, really well in math when we implemented that program, when they were piloting that program. But the reading was way down. Do you see what I mean? So there's always checks and balances in it. And for us, or for me at this point, and I think all of us, that in kindergarten and grade 1, it's all about reading, right? Reading skills and strategies, and math is important for sure. But I had a meeting with kindergarten, and we had done a lot of the literacy at the beginning of the year through the Boost program and so on. And they were saying, well, we haven't really gotten to math as much. But one of the teachers who was involved in the Boost program said, yes, but I have started math, and the kids are already adding and counting and moving much faster than the kids had previously.
Mhm.
So it's just interesting to look at and think about. But I think math is in a really great place right now. We've matched, Tracy actually did a scope and sequence for Minot this last summer, had that all squared away. We've got benchmarks going. We don't love the benchmarks in the Envision math program, so we're creating our own through a Google form. Like, there are all this energy going on about looking at where kids are, what they need to know. And because of the benchmarks, we've learned that kids don't necessarily hang on to the information that we taught them in the last unit.
Mhm.
So they're having a hard time taking the idea of fractions, for example, and then transferring that to the next concept. So we've realized we have to change some of our instructional strategies to make sure that that doesn't happen. So we're in it. You know, we're really looking, and I would say, in it over our heads with trying to make sure that we're getting the information to the students and that they're learning.
Good.
Andrea, can I add about math?
Yes.
I've been doing I've had a lot of conversations with my teachers about math and reading, and how we've always taught them as separate entities. But in the early grades, they're very similar because we're identifying letters, or we're identifying numbers, we're understanding sounds, we're understanding value. So there's such a huge correlation between the skills that we're learning in reading and attributing those same skills in reading to the mathematics. Because really, reading numbers, it's the same thing. As we read numbers, we read them left to right, as we do with words. So there's a lot of similarities that we're really talking about and looking at. And it seems as though now that we're approaching mathematics through a reading lens, teaching it through literacy, that we're building those same skill sets as opposed to being a separate entity. So it's pretty cool work. I'm very excited about it, especially from my math background of thinking of it as this separate subject. And now we think of it holistically.
Will it be exciting to see how that carries through to later grades too? Yeah,
And we're
that's great.
keeping a very close eye. I mean, I hound people about the data, but we have to be very, very diligent in looking at where we are all the time, because if anything we're doing isn't working, we need to stop doing that and do something else, right? Like, we don't want to be wasting anybody's time. We have 180 days, 6 hours a day. That's less than half a year and a tiny portion of a 24-hour period. You know, we don't have a lot of time. So we don't have a lot of time to waste. And our kids need a lot. So we need to pay attention. I'm hounding all the time, and I feel I'm a nag, and I get it. But if we're not doing what's right for our kids, then that's disservice to them. So far, I think, overall, we're on a really nice pathway. And it's been that way for a bit. So that's not changing, even though I know people are moving. And other things are changing. As far as our where we're going with our strategic planning and our school improvement planning and the survey data, all the information that we've collected and the data that we gathered, I think we have some really solid practices in place to change the trajectory for our students' future, which is the goal. giving them any opportunity that they want, right? They deserve the same thing that every other kid in any other school has, regardless of their income.
Which goes back to your opening, when you said that your goal is 90%, and you shouldn't sell yourself short, because we are at 90% at one level and working towards that. at the
Yeah, but we'll
others.
be, it's got to be 90 or more.
Mhm.
100 would really be nice, but I have to be somewhat, you know what I mean?
Well, thank you. Does anyone else have any questions? No? Thank you very much. Next is the report of the business manager.
Hi, sorry. Good evening.
Good evening.
So we circulated a summary of our state and federal grants ahead of this meeting. I also included the revolving and private grants from the previous meeting in case you had any questions on those. You'll see I've continued in this report to try and separate. We've gone through this process of separating the different year grants because federal grants have got increasingly complicated because a single year's grant can actually now span up to 27 months. So you have multiple grants overlapping. So that's what we've tried to reflect here. And in some cases, we're showing a deficit, but that's because some of the transaction have gone to the wrong line, whether they should be in the multi-year grant or the single-year grant. But you can see there's a lot going on, a lot of different grants. Is there any particular questions?
Well, I have a question. So would that be a reason why some grants aren't used in some years? Because they say on page 5.
Yep.
At the bottom. District and school assistants. So is that why that grant wasn't used in a particular in this year?
I'm just looking. Well, yeah. So you can see actually on the next line, you can see that we did use it. So there's just an overlap between those two lines. So see, there's a deficit on that other line.
Okay.
So the revenue or the expenditure was posted to the multi-year grant line, but some of the revenue was on that. Is being used as there historically.
Okay. Mike, do you have a question?
Yeah. I don't have a question about the grants, but I do have a question about buses. Now I think it was back in November. It was like the kickoff, the public hearing, I think, for the budget and such. And
Yep.
and I got to the microphone and I had asked about buses and how many had cameras. And I think you said half or so don't.
Yep.
For the general, for non-sped.
Yep.
Is that still the case?
So all our regular ed in-district buses now have cameras on them.
Wow, I thought that was going to be done next year. So right now,
Yep.
in this year,
Yep.
they all
installed.
have so I guess all buses now, the sped and
No, not all. Just the in-district regular ed. The special ed don't. They're much smaller buses.
Gotcha.
Yeah, so
in-district regular ed. So good. That's good. That's really good to hear.
Yeah, it's great, and they're great
Yeah.
quality, and it's been very
That's great.
helpful.
And then I understand we're leasing 4 sped vans.
That's the plan. Yes.
Was that budgeted?
So we haven't done it yet, and we would do it next year, and then the first lease payment wouldn't be due until the following year. So that's how we would do it.
So we can buy them now and pay
Yeah.
for them next year, but
Yeah.
they are budgeted for next year?
Yeah, exactly.
Okay.
Yeah.
All right, thank you. And I knew you were coming up later. That's why I want to echo Ms. Bakioki's comments. She was, wishing you well and stuff. It's been great working with you. It really has. And you got some big shoes to fill there. The incoming business manager. I'm gonna miss you. I really rely on your reports and your candor, and thank you very much.
Thank you very much. I appreciate it. I've enjoyed it a lot. Thank you.
So I have another question. Under the Student Support and Academic Enrichment Grant, so next year's award is a lot more. So has the scope of the grant changed, or?
So just direct me, what page are you on?
Oh, page 6, sorry.
Page 6. The Title 4, yeah.
Yes.
So the Title 4? Yeah.
Is it specifically for exam, to give assistance?
Yeah.
I almost took up.
Yeah.
That's okay.
Yeah.
That's all right. It wouldn't be the first time. The Title IV was new to us this year, actually.
Oh,
And it
okay.
gives, it provides you with a few different choices within that realm of, you have, I think, 3 different choices you can use that money for.
Mhm.
And we chose, after I spoke with the high school, to just use it to pay for AP and IB testing fees.
Mhm.
So, and it carries over. So, for example, we were able to cover, I think, $8,192, I believe the bill is. Right, I just got it today.
Okay.
So, for AP testing through the College Board.
Mhm.
So we'll be able to pay for those fees through this grant.
Okay.
And if it comes up again next year, I'll keep replenishing that because our students are engaged in a lot of those activities, right? They do IB, and IB will be the first year for exams because IB is a 2-year program before you take the exam.
Okay.
And so those fees will help offset students who are struggling with paying those fees. So I'm going to keep putting that money as much as possible into that account.
Okay.
For that purpose.
There was a different grant previously that covered some of that expense. Is that not true?
Yes,
The MIMSI
Scott,
grant?
that was through the high school.
Okay.
It was the NIMSI, I think it was
MIMSI, yeah.
called,
Mhm. Yeah.
right? That ran out, I think was last year.
Oh,
So
okay.
this came up in a really good time to
Right.
be able to
So this
help.
is not in addition to that? This
No.
is instead of that? Okay.
Yes.
Okay. All right, great. How much is an IB, the exam fee?
I don't remember right now off the top of my head,
Yeah,
but
I'm
I'll
just
find out for
curious.
you.
Okay, thank you.
And we've just not received all the funds there. So although the full amount is $15,000, we've just not received all those funds
Mhm.
yet, which is why.
Nor have you paid, we just
Yeah.
got the
Well,
bill.
I'm
for
not
the-
sure I'm not sure how they're working it. I don't think the state knows how they're working it. We've tried to get answers from them, but I do know that either they're going to pay the College Board directly, like somehow they're involved, right?
Mhm.
And the different institutions will be involved. So we're working on that now so that we may not actually, that it might be in that bucket, but I don't know that
Yeah.
we ask for the funding to then pay it back out again. I think they have a relationship with the testing services.
Okay.
So, but we're working on those details with the state.
Okay.
They know, they're so clear. Just kidding.
Thank you.
Sure.
Does.
So then I guess it's fair, I moved on to the revolving funds.
Yep.
Does anyone else have any questions about the grants? Is it fair to say that just because there's an ending balance in one of these doesn't mean it's not being used? Just means you haven't paid
So for
paid
example,
out on it yet. So for instance, on page 3, under the PM2 program,
Yep.
so there were no expenses yet paid out of there, but that doesn't mean there won't be.
Yeah, so some of the PM2 programs, the costs are often related to the graduation and so on, so those
Mhm.
costs, there'll be some expenditure then.
Okay. Okay. Does anyone else have any questions about the revolving? Okay.
Thank you very much.
Thank you, Michael. Next up is the superintendent's report.
Okay, thank you. I would be asking for vote approval. You have the payroll listed on June 9th. I would also add payroll week ending June 16th in the amount of $151,492.50. $431.07. I would ask for the bill warrant that's listed, as well as bill warrant for June 28th in the amount of $230,771.17. I would ask you to approve those 4 items.
Is there a motion to approve?
So moved.
All those in favor? Mike?
Aye.
Laurie? Aye. 300.
Okay. I would just like to thank all our staff, faculty and staff, administrators, as we're coming to the end of this school year, for all their hard work and their dedication. Greatly appreciate everything and wish everyone a very safe summer vacation. To remind people that when we meet again in the fall, our location will be changing. We'll be meeting over in the multi-service room center on the 3rd floor, and our day will change, so it will be a Thursday. So we look forward to greeting everyone in August. And that concludes my report.
Thank you. I've been working on a nomination for lifetime membership in the Mass Association of School Committees for Jeff Sweat. So I would just ask that we take a vote to approve that. The deadline is July 1st, so in order for me to submit that, I would just ask for a vote to approve.
Second.
Roll call vote. Mike?
Aye.
Laurie?
Aye.
Aye. 300. Thank you. Is there any other business that was not anticipated? Yes, sorry. It is on there, sorry.
Yeah. Oh, yeah, all right. So I just wanted to mention, so I attended my first Cape Cod Collaborative meeting. And I was hoping Mr. Sweat was going to be here, because I know he had done that multiple years.
Mm-hmm.
And I know Ms. Morgan did it last time around. I did not know, I did not have any expectations going in, but I didn't know it was going to be like this. You are literally another school committee member on this board. I thought I was just going to like spectate and report back to what's going on, but their agenda was 9 pages.
Is
right?
that your packet of material?
This is the packet. This is the we had to approve handbooks and the way it works over there, there's no union. They're not unionized. So every year, not every like 3 years, but every year, the school committee votes on the staff, and not just to rehire them. I mean, and by name, like a whole slate. And so, it's way different than here. But it was interesting. They were great people. I mean, we meet a ton of people from all different districts, and I'm actually looking forward to it. I just didn't know it was that much. So.
And how often do you meet?
Once a month, but this was the last meeting. The next meeting isn't until September.
Oh, okay.
Yeah, and they have 170 buses. I'm still wrapping my brain around how they do busing there. It's a lot.
Had you not served on that committee when you were on the school
I never
committee
had.
before?
I know, like I said, I never had. And the people, it's great that they attended and stuff, but like there was very little reporting back on what happened. So that's why I didn't have any idea what to expect. So I mean, you guys did a great job, Jeff. I think Mel too, right? And Miss Morgan. So this, yeah, and it's like I said, it's not. I don't even think it's a 1 year. I don't think it's a 1 year commitment. You're just going to get up to speed like any school committee member. You after your first year, you're just kind of getting your feet wet, So you might have to do it another year after that.
Well, good.
Yeah.
So I look forward to you reporting back to us so
Yeah.
that we will have a better idea of what they.
I will.
Yeah. Thank you.
Yep.
Is there any other business that anyone has? No? Is there a motion to adjourn?
So moved.
Second.
Okay, roll call. Mike?
Aye.
Laurie?
Aye.
Aye. 300. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you.
No. I just feel like it's so quiet in here tonight, like it was weirdly quiet. I don't know.
It's warm in here all of a sudden.
Okay.